Yes, hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a slightly bit of a different prediction. I'm just going to be doing a prediction for the PFL versus Bellator Champions card for this upcoming weekend. It's a very exciting card. It's one out in Saudi, and it's interesting to see it be made now that PFL have bought out Bellator. It's trying to unify champions and make there just be one clear champion, even though technically no titles are officially on the line for this, from what I believe. But yeah, if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you did indeed, or do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, I mean, I've already started talking about it because I'm very excited about it. And so, there was originally, from what I believe, there was four kind of title champion versus champion fights, but there's now only two. I'm going to go through both of them like I would a normal prediction and kind of rattle off attributes about them that I'm interested in, and I'm going to try not to be here all day speaking about it because it is something I'm quite passionate about, this card, and it's an exciting one for me. And just offering a couple honourable mentions from this card because it is a good card, even though on paper, if you look at UFC cards, they probably are clear and better. But I appreciate these kind of lower level, to an extent, organisations in MMA, and yeah, these are still very high level fights. So also on this card, I want to speak about Santos versus Romero. It's a very entertaining fight. I think it's very evenly matched. I think they're both very experienced at the top level and have fought some very top level fights in their time, and yeah, it's going to be an entertaining one. For these honourable mentions, I'm not really going to give a prediction. I'm just saying that these are good fights. So yeah, that's one of them. Collard versus McKee. I mean, Collard, he's a very good fighter. He's beaten some big names in the likes of Pettis and Stevens, and he used to be in the UFC himself. And there's a hype around him and McKee. I mean, he's been a very dominant Bellator fighter. I believe he only lost in that title fight rematch. So he's, other than that, he's been very dominant, and so he's going to have a lot of hype behind him. Representing Bellator, it's good to see Claressa Shields back. She's now back fighting in MMA against another opponent who's not really on paper seemed to be amazing, but you never know, she could cause a threat, and it just shows the versatility to an extent of Shields to be able to jump between MMA and boxing, even if the MMA opposition aren't crazily impressive. But like I say, it's nice to see her back fighting in it. And Cooper Free versus Jackson is an interesting one as well. I know Cooper Free, from what I believe, is coming in as a somewhat short noticed opponent, but he's been in the PFL for a long time. He is coming off a defeat versus Brunson, but Brunson is a high level operator, and so I respect him for coming in on short notice here. And I mean, Jackson, he's a Bellator champion himself, and he's the welterweight champion there, and he's been quite an impressive fighter as of in recent years, and he is moving up in weight though. This is, I believe, a catch weight at £185, £183, something like that. So he is moving up in weight a bit for this fight, but I still think it's going to be an entertaining one. And then the somewhat little rule things that I wanted to talk about. I mean, all these fights are 3-round fights. A little bit of a shame for both of these two main event fights. I would have liked them to have been 5-round fights, but they're only 3 rounds. And from what I believe, there's no elbows permitted. Oh no, elbows are permitted. Sorry, yep, elbows are permitted. Unlike that of normal PFL ruling where they aren't, which is nice because Bellator, they are used to using elbows, and there's a lot of fighters which can utilize them very well, like one of the people in the main event, Eblin, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm going to speak about that a bit more in just a moment. But I'm going to start off with the Ferreira versus Bader fight, the heavyweight title of both of the organisations going against each other. It's a very entertaining fight, and overall, like I say, this card's very entertaining. It's interesting to see that the Saudi money's kind of got this to happen, but like I say, it's nice to see that it is happening. And Ferreira representing PFL, Bader representing Bellator. Bader, as the older fighter, he's still been very impressive in recent years, and he's been very solid from, if you kind of look from even 2013, 14 onwards, he's been very solid, and he's moved up from light heavyweight to heavyweight because he's kind of realised that he's going to struggle to make the light heavyweight a bit now, but he still looked very impressive in the process, and he's been getting some quick fire knockouts and some quick stoppages. And I mean, Ferreira as a fighter, he's just such a big presence and such a tall fighter, and the way that he has been knocking out opponents as well has been dangerous looking, and this fight has got a good fight written all over it really, and it's been branded very well. But to start off speaking of them as fighters, Ferreira as a fighter, He's got, obviously, like I mentioned, he's a tall fighter, a very tall fighter. He's got a long reach, and he does utilise that very well. He changes levels well, picks his shots well. He's powerful, very powerful. Like I say, he's very much able to flip momentum and capitalise when his opponents are hurt, and he's very good at that, with also the good accuracy that he holds. He's got solid feints, very good timing, and he will patiently wait to pick that shot to then time that shot, which he will then, capitalise on. And if you are rushing in, like sometimes Bader does, he can capitalise on that. He can fight off the front foot or the back foot well. He's physically strong, and like I say, it's a very good striking ability overall from Ferreira. The negatives about him: he's a bit of a slow starter. He does struggle on the ground quite a lot. I mean, getting off his back, he can struggle on. He can tire on the ground. He doesn't have too much of a impressive as takedown defense as possibly you'd expect from quite a tall opponent. He can be dominated on the ground. He doesn't move especially well on his feet in general. He's not overly fast in the movements in that aspect, even though he has got quite fast hands with his reactions. But actual physical movement wise, it's not overly impressive. He doesn't allow his opponent. No, he. Sorry, he's got quite an open guard. That's what I was going to say. He's got quite an open guard when he is on the feet as well. And even just being a threat on the ground in general, he doesn't really offer that too much. And actually physically imposing his size, because he can be quite patient, he doesn't really physically impose his size too much, is what I probably would have wanted him to. But yeah, no, to speak about him, I'm trying to, like I say, rattle through these relatively quickly to an extent, because we do have another fight which I want to go through in a similar kind of intent and similar kind of in-depthness as this one. But to speak about Bader as a fighter, he's physically strong, he's powerful, he's good at imposing himself physically. He finds range well, even though he is the shorter fighter, but he is typically quite good at finding range. He moves well, he's got solid feints, picks his shots quite well as well. He's got good wrestling and good transitioning to takedowns, and he does seem to, go for a double leg and successfully gain that double leg very often. And it's impressive how he manages to make it work with that physical strength very well. He's got a strong jab, and he's knocked opponents out with that strong jab. That Fedor and Emelianenko fight was an interesting one with that strong jab, but either way, he managed to get him out. He will finish you and is good finishing you when you're hurt. He's good at gaining takedowns. He doesn't realistically let his opponents back up onto their feet very easily. He's quite good at scrambling as well. And he does have relatively awkward movements as well when he is on his feet and when he is just kind of bouncing around to start off with. It's quite awkward movements, and it's relatively difficult to time to an extent. The negatives about him: he's slower in my opinion, kind of like with his hands wise, he's slower. He's been for a lot of fights. He's been fighting for ages now. If you look back at some of his fights, he fought John Jones in 2011, I believe. And so, he's been for a lot. I believe he's like 40 odd now. So, yeah, he's definitely experienced a lot. But, how long is that going to be able to last with him fighting top level guys? His chin can be in the air quite a lot of times if Ferreira can catch him with a shot. He can also be quite susceptible to head kicks. That seems to be a bit of a kryptonite of his. And with Ferreira's good kicks and varied attacks, you could capitalise on that there. And I'm sure he's been looking at that. He can be wild when he's coming in. Like I say, it's unorthodox. It's quite awkward, but he can be quite wild. And if Ferreira can seem to time it, then it does. He does also rush when he's coming in the process as well. When I say he's got awkward movements, he does, but he can also become predictable at times when he does just continuously, kind of to an extent, spam that double leg takedown and just continuously go for it over and over again. Like I say, it can become predictable at times, and you can see it coming. He, like I say, needs to vary his attacks a bit more. I don't think he really utilises his kicks as much as what he could do, and he doesn't change levels with his actual striking as much as he could do. He does stand up quite straight. I think he struggles a bit when he is on the back foot, but I don't know if Ferreira's going to be able to put him on the back foot because he's not really that imposing of a figure on the front foot. He doesn't really counter too well. He's willing to take shots to, then respond with shots, but that's when he can also take head shots because he thinks he's just kind of trying to catch him on the gloves. But they are quite powerful, and you can't always just catch him on the gloves and just expect to be able to come forwards afterwards. But for the winner, I'm going to go with Bader via TKO in round 2. I think if he can land a few shots and possibly in the first round, if he can gain a wrestling advantage and get Ferreira onto the ground, he can tire him out in that first round and really work him out in that first round, and then get a stoppage into the second round, even if that is just ground and pound stoppage. I could see that happening, and that's how he would win. And it'd be very impressive. Like I say, he's been through so much, and as a 40-year-old something odd man that has been in the game for so long, to be in his peak of his career at the moment, and if he does go on to win this would be huge for him. And like I said, I believe he will. But to move on to the next fight, so uh, Eblin versus Kazan Gene. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. And this is the middleweight fight for the middleweight champion in Bellator and PFL. So Kazan Gene is the PFL middleweight champion, and Eblin is the Bellator middleweight champion. But to speak about Eblin starting off as a fighter, he's got momentum. I mean, he's unbeaten so far, and he is seen as this incredible talent. And I completely agree that he is an incredible talent, and he's got a lot of momentum and a lot of pressure, I suppose, to an extent. But momentum is typically seen as good. It can help with self confidence and confidence in general. He's fighting wise, he's explosive. He's got good, solid feints. He moves well, counters well. He's got varied striking, solid combinations. He's physically strong, pressure fighter who's relentless on the front foot. He likes to control the centre. He's an aggressive wrestler. He won't be bullied. He's transitioning to on the cage is very good. The way he moves you around is very impressive, and he's got a big right hook and a big right hand in general. And so he's just a very good fighter, and the talent that I've been seeing from him as of recent is very impressive. And I think if he goes on to win this fight, he could go on to have even bigger fights. And if he ever does go into the UFC, there is some huge opportunities there for him. And fair play to Bellator to be able to get a fighter like him, because he has been so impressive and he's proved that so far. And I suppose to an extent, the negatives about him, he is a bit of a slower starter at times. Sometimes he's really quick, but sometimes he's a bit of a slower starter. His accuracy at times isn't always amazing. He hasn't had an immensely tough test yet. I think he is still waiting for that immensely tough test, and I think this could be not, like I say, an immensely tough one, but it's definitely a tough one, and somebody who you need to be prepared for, and somebody who is possibly, in my opinion, coming into this as the underdog in Kasagane, but does also have a lot of self-confidence and has improved a lot from his earlier time, and has also got experience at the top level. And so, in my opinion, this is going to be his toughest test so far. He's a slight bit wild at times. He will have to close the range, and he can kind of run into timed shots when he is trying to close the range. And so, he's going to be forced to close the range, and so he's going to have to do that quite smartly. He can stay in close a bit too long with his shots, and he's good in close, but like I say, sometimes staying in there a bit too long, and he doesn't really threaten much submissions. I mean, he's a good wrestler, like I say, but he doesn't really threaten many submission attempts. And when he does get you to the ground, it is more like ground and pound. It isn't really too much submission wise. But yeah, no, to speak about Casagne, as a fighter, he's a fast starter. I mean, I've seen some of his fights where he just straight away get on the front foot, and so yeah, he's a fast starter. He's aggressive. He changes levels well. He gives his all. He's got good, very varied skills. He's a well-rounded mixed martial artist. He has developed a lot, like I said, from the earlier times in his career when you kind of seen him getting stopped badly against Buckley and that kind of highlight reel knockout, and being released from the UFC. He's faced adversity, he's come through that adversity. He's now, in my opinion, in the best part of his career. His mentality must be a lot more stronger now, and he must be confident now. And like I say, the fact that he has faced adversity, he's going to be probably more determined than ever to not face that again. And so that's what makes him, in my opinion, dangerous to an extent as a fighter. I mean, he is powerful. Sometimes he could do with a bit more power in some of his shots, but when he does put his shots together, he is powerful. He's front foot fighter. He's a long range striker, and like I say, if he can keep Eblin at range with his strikes, that would be impressive. And the way he does let his hands go with them solid combinations when he does have you backed up on the cage, it is impressive. And like I say, he's faced a lot of adversity in his career so far. But to speak about a little bit of some negatives, can be a bit too eager at times. Obviously, he has been stopped badly in the past. Not to say that, like I say, he has improved a lot since then, and that was a while ago now, but he has been stopped badly in the past, so there's possibilities of that maybe happening again in his chin how strong that actually is. He can leave himself vulnerable when he's on the ground, just making little mistakes at times when he's on the ground, opening himself up to submission attempts. But like I say, Evelyn, I don't think he's really going to threaten that. He can be outstrengthed. He doesn't really go to too much of an effort to get off his back, and I don't feel like he's amazingly good at getting off his back. And when Evelyn does get you up on the cage and is unloading shots up on the cage, how's he going to be able to react to that? He's moving back down in weight a bit. He's been fluctuating in weight from I think 170 when he was fighting in UFC to now 205, which he's gone up to a bit, and now he's fluctuating. I think he's coming back down to middleweight for this one from light heavyweight, from what I believe. Might be wrong. He can be smothered a bit, and then that's when his work can become a little bit sloppy. I don't think he's amazingly good on the inside, and when he's on the back foot, I think he doesn't have the amazingly best of counters. But to say a winner for this one, I'm going to go with an Evelyn win via KO in round 3. I think he's going to be able to wear him down and, bully him to an extent with his physical fitness and physicality in general. And then I think he's going to be able to get an impressive stoppage, come into the final round where Kasankane has been tied and been worked out, and Evelyn is going to come through. And then, I'm picking 2 Bellator champions as both the winners. I don't know, in my opinion, I think Bellator's been around for longer. They've gotten these entertaining fighters. Possibly if there were all 4 of the fights that were meant to be on this card were on it, then I possibly could have said something a bit different. If they do end up doing another one of these cards with them 2 other fights as the 2 other main events, I'll most definitely do a prediction for that. But I'm going to be, of course, keeping my eyes very close on this event, and I'm very excited for it. And I hope you did enjoy this video. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.